My name is Peter Christ. I am one of the co-founders of LEAP, Law Enforcement Against Prohibition, a 501c3 nonprofit organization that is trying to bring a major change to American drug policy by moving to a regulated and controlled marketplace rather than a prohibitionary marketplace. I originally from Buffalo, New York. I spent 20 years in law enforcement, retiring as a captain in the spring of 1989 after 20 years of service. I worked in a suburb of the city of Buffalo called the town of Tonawanda. We had about 110 officer department, served a community of roughly 85,000 people. Immediately upon retiring, I got myself involved in drug policy reform because after 20 years of police work, in fact, not after, but during 20 years of police work, I saw the futility of this policy in our society and felt that well, it's interesting when you mention Obama, Bush, and Clinton. These are three people that used what are currently illegal drugs. They admit to that. All three of them do. Mr. Bush not quite as readily, but certainly alludes to it by saying that he doesn't talk about anything that happened before he was 25 years old. So when you ask someone, just to give you a little old police advice, when you ask somebody a question and they say they don't talk about that, that's a yes. Okay, so that's how you tell a yes. All three of them did not have the great misfortune of being arrested for that behavior. If they had, none of them would have been president. So that is the type of impact that this type of policy has on people. On the other hand, there's many more people in this year that aren't lucky enough in our society to not be arrested for it. And we have a little saying at LEAP, and that is, you can recover from your addiction. You never recover from your conviction. And what we mean by that is you get a felony conviction or a misdemeanor conviction, a criminal conviction on your record, that goes with you to every job interview you go to for the rest of your life. It never goes away. It's there forever. On the other hand, drug use or drug abuse, if that's what you happen to fall into, can happen for a couple of years in your life and you can come out of it and nobody knows that it happened to you. There's no asking on your job application whether you ever had this problem or anything like that. So, in fact, we know what works in our society overwhelmingly, that treatment and education work. We should know what doesn't work, and that is filling half of our prison cells in this country with nonviolent drug offenders. And anytime I mention the word prison, I always like to point out one simple fact that we should all be aware of, and that is, in this wonderful country of the United States of America, with the largest prison population in the world and the biggest prison system in the world, we do not have in the United States of America one drug-free prison. And if we can't keep drugs out of prison, the next time you hear somebody talk about a drug-free community or a drug-free neighborhood or a drug-free America, just think how ludicrous that statement is. I relate this a little bit off subject, but I relate this to, I remember many years ago watching a Johnny Carson show, and there was some actor on, and he had just at 61 years old or whatever, had just his big first movie success. And Johnny Carson says to him, "Boy, you're a real overnight success." And his response was, "Yeah, it only took me 40 years to become an overnight success." So we've been working at this a long time. Sometimes the work has seemed futile, but then joyous little things happening, like, for instance, the current drug czar, Kilikowski, in a news conference, mentioned LEAP. Now, don't misunderstand me. He was not praising the work that we do, but he at least acknowledged our presence. And they have to acknowledge you before they can start listening to you. So it's growing. This takes a long time to make major social change in any society. You know, when that 20 years ago, when the Berlin Wall fell, we looked at that as an overnight success too. But we forget the decades of people who worked to bring that about. And the day it came down was just the day it came down. That was not the only day that the work was being done. There was a lot of work that led up to it. So this takes a lot of time, it takes a lot of perseverance, and it takes never giving up. You know, I have ultimate faith in the intelligence of our species. And I think that it may take a while, but if you keep telling them the truth over and over and over again, eventually they get it. When we first started LEAP back in 2002, I had some people ask me, "Well, what is your plan for this organization?" And I said, my plan for this organization is to create an organization that will create the type of view that people see that will allow working law enforcement people to feel comfortable in joining us. And how we did that was we stayed on point. We only are about ending the policy of prohibition in America. We are not medical marijuana people particularly, but obviously if you end prohibition, there's no more discussion about whether marijuana should be legal or not because the prohibition's over with, it would be legal. But we don't go off onto side issues. We stay on point. And the reason we stay on that point so narrowly is because it is the only thing we can really speak to from our experience and our point of expertise. We are not the ones to set up the regulatory system. When people ask me, well, how would that look? I say any form of regulation is better than what we're doing now. If we simply take all these currently banned drugs and only move them to the prescription drug program, that would create a regulated and controlled marketplace. And we can work from that point on. Or if we decided we're going to sell some of these like we sell tobacco or alcohol over the counter, that also would be a regulated program and would give us more control over it. What we have created in our thinking in America is what I call the drug monolith. And what I mean by that is, if we hear about an overdose someplace, we say drug problem. Then we hear about a drive-by shooting someplace, and you've all heard this phrase, drug-related shooting. We hear about that and we say drug problem. In reality, these are two profoundly separate and different problems. That overdose, that is in fact the drug problem. That is connected with the use and abuse of these dangerous substances, and that is driven by a thing called human desire. People choose to do this activity. On the other hand, that drive-by shooting, that's not the drug problem. That's the drug policy problem. Just like the St. Valentine's Day Massacre back in Chicago in 1929 wasn't an alcohol-related shooting, but a prohibition-related shooting. This violence that we're hearing about in American cities on the Mexican border is not drug-related violence, but drug prohibition-related violence. And the interesting thing about the separation of these two things is this. Some may disagree with me, but I don't think we're going to be very successful in changing human desire. On the other hand, when it comes to policy, we have shown in our history, and I'm sure we'll show in our future, that bad policy is something we are able to change and correct. One of the things that LEAP has brought to this discussion is, again, the professionalism of law enforcement. And we are speaking to that issue. And as I said earlier, we are staying on that narrow point. The thing that we bring to the debate on this is up until LEAP, pretty basically, if there was a debate about drug policy, it was the judge or the DA or the police chief or the DEA agent who was debating the crazy hippie who said, we should legalize drugs, Now, because of LEAP, it is the DEA agent debating the DEA agent. It is the judge debating the judge. It is the police chief debating the police chief. And now to the audience, the decision is, which judge are you going to believe? Not are you going to believe the judge or the crazy hippie, but which judge are you going to believe? And now we have to focus on the issue. And I believe that when you focus on the issue, we will eventually be proven to be correct in our choice of policy in this society. LEAP is a multi-member organization. We allow anybody can join LEAP. It costs nothing to join. All you do is basically put your name on our mailing list to show you that you support what we do. You can get a hold of us by going to copsaylegalizedrugs.org. That'll take you to the LEAP website. Or you can go to leap.cc, or I'll make it real easy for you. All you got to do is type the word LEAP into Google, and we're the first thing that pops up.
Law Enforcement Against Prohibition. These men and women have served in the trenches of the drug war as prosecutors, judges, cops, guards, and wardens. They have seen firsthand the utter futility of our policy and now work together to end drug prohibition. Please visit leap.cc.